We continue with our daily Gemara. We are on Kuf Yud Beis 110b in Sanhedrin. It's another wonderful day in Montreal. It's beautiful. So if you can, safely, I definitely encourage you to go outside. Take a walk wearing a mask if need be. Get out your balcony if you have one. It's a beautiful day. Okay, so we left off the discussion yesterday about the children of the wicked. First, the children of the wicked amongst the Jewish people. And we had Rabbi Akiva, who is more benevolent, and saying that they will have a share in the world to come. In fact, Hashem will guard them and protect them and give them extra blessing. And likewise, we spoke about the children of the wicked amongst the nations of the world who do not have the share in the world to come. So apropos to the discussion of children and the share in the world to come, the Gemara has the following discussion. I'm first going to relate what the Gemara says here. As we always do, begin with the literal just translation. Then I'm going to share with you an interesting Gemara elsewhere, and then what I read in relation to both of these Gemaras combined. So let's see. It's we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom of the page. The fifth to last word says Itmar. Itmar, we've been taught. I think I've mentioned this in the past here, when the Gemara introduces a discussion, by the way in which the Gemara introduces, it gives you some context. So often the Gemara introduces a source or a text by saying Tana or the Tanan, in which case it's a Mishnaic age text. And then when the Gemara introduces a discussion with the word Itmar, we have been told it means it's the post-Mishnaic era, it's the Amaraic era, it's the era of the Gemara. So Itmar, we've been taught during the era of the Gemara. Katan, a child, at what point does it start to come to the world to come? So what this would mean is, the practical, as a word difference would be, is if God forbid a child passed at a very young age, at what point can we say that they've earned a share in the world to come? Now I mentioned before that the world to come can either mean heaven, life after death, as we know it today, or it could mean the world to come in the Messianic era. From Rashi, in one of the Rashis here, it seems like it's talking about the Messianic era, but it could be both. So at what point does a child earn a share in the world to come if, God forbid, they didn't live old enough to be able to be judged for their good behavior versus their negative behavior? So Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon the son of Rabbi were discussing this, or Barav, were discussing this question. Chad Amar, one of the two, either Rabbi Chia or Rabbi Shimon, said, Mishasha Noilad, from the moment the child's born. The moment the child's born, just by the very fact that it came to this world, already earns its share in the world to come. And if, God forbid, that was the end of the child's life, it would still make it to the world to come. Chad Amar, and one says, Mishasha Siper, from the point when it starts to be able to speak, and it can utter a word of Torah, or it can utter a word of praise of Hashem, already at that point it's earned its share in the world to come. And the Gemara brings verses to back up both of these views. Mandamar Mishashan Oilad, the one who says that the child earns a share in the world to come from the moment of birth, as the verse reads, Yavoyu v'yagidu tzidkasai, they shall come and they shall relate his righteousness, La'am Noilad ki asa, to the nation that is born that he made. So the literal meaning is the nation that God gave birth to, as it were. But we can read it to mean La'am Noilad, to the nation that was born, meaning just by being born, already they earned their place in that they Yavoyu v'yagidu, they can come and say his righteousness in the world to come. Just by the fact that Noilad, they were born, gives them the right that in a future time they can come and relate God's praises in the world to come. Mandamar, the one who says Mishasha Siper, that the child only earns a share in the world to come once he has the capacity and once he does relate, speak some word of Torah, some word of prayer, some word of praise of Hashem. Tiksiv, as the verse reads, Zera Yavdenu, the seed of those who serve God, meaning the children of Jewish people, Yesupar La Hashem Ladar, will relate to God in that generation. So Yesupar La Hashem, relating to God, in that their capacity to return is Ladar, the capacity to return to, in the time of the Messianic era, is Yesupar La Hashem, once they've already spoken words for Hashem. So this is two views, Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon. But the Gemara now adds more views. Itmar, we've been taught. Ravina says, Misha Shenizra, from the moment of conception. From the moment of conception, this child already earns a share in the world to come. Hasn't even made it out of the womb to breathe. Doesn't even have a heartbeat. But from the moment of conception, it already earns a share in the world to come. Tiksiv, as the verse reads, Zera Yavdanu, their seed shall of the servants. So even the seed, just by Zera, just by the seed doing its job and beginning the process of conception, that alone is enough for this child to earn a share in the world to come. Amazing. Another two views. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Mishash and Nimel, from the moment of when it has a bris milah, when it goes through the circumcision and it's in the covenant. So at that point, it already has its share in the world to come. Tiksiv, as the verse reads, Onyani, this is a verse in Tehillim where King David says, I am poor, meaning lacking in mitzvot. V'goiva minar, and from a young age, I'm already v'goiva minar, heading towards death already at a young age. Nasasi emecha, I carry your fear, afuna, impressed upon me. So the verse is saying, even at a young age, going to death, or as Rashi says, the word goiva, which means going to death, could also mean as part of the world to come, vayigva vayosef, that they get returned. And when does that start? From Nasasi emecha, from the moment he carries God's fear, which is pressed upon him, that is, namely the circumcision. From the moment of circumcision, he already has a share in the world to come. This is Rabbi Nachman, son of Yitzchak's view. And one last view, Tana B'Shum Rab Meir has been taught in the name of Rab Meir. Rab Meir is a Tanaic from the Tanaic age, which is why I introduced with the word Tana, rather than Itmar, as was introduced earlier, which is the Gemara, the Maraic age. Rab Meir said, Mishasha Yomer Amen, from the moment the child first says the word Amen, in response to a blessing. Shneimar, as the verse reads, Pischush Arim, open up the gates, the verse in Isaiah, Ve'avoyu Goy Tzadik, and let the righteous nation come in, Shomer Amunim, guardians of the faith. So, says Rab Meir, I'll take your Shem Amunim, don't read it as guardians of the faith, which would imply people are old enough to have faith and to conceptualize these theological ideas, but rather Ela Shomer Amen, take the word Amunim and take the word Shomer Amunim and kind of play with the letters and split it up into two, Shomer Amen, that they say Amen. Let those who say Amen enter in. So the moment the child's old enough and does say Amen to a blessing, the child enters into the share, has a share in the world to come. So we had a number of views here. Moment of birth, the moment it begins to say words of Torah and prayer, moment of conception, moment of the Brit Milah, the covenant, the circumcision, and number 6, the moment it gets to say Amen in response to a blessing. So perhaps this is related to the idea that once the godly soul comes into the body, comes into this world, in that moment alone, it already begins to fulfill its purpose. And the question is, to what degree the godly soul needs to come into the body for that to have happened. So let's just get some background. The Gemara says elsewhere that Mashiach comes when all souls that are in heaven come down to this world. So the very fact that a soul comes down to this world, it already fills its purpose, or a purpose, in that it hastens the coming of Mashiach, which is the ultimate purpose for which we're all working. And I mentioned before that I said I would relate that which I've read elsewhere with respect to someone who, God forbid, suffers from or experiences a miscarriage. Certainly it's a very painful experience, and we hope no one has to ever go through that. But at the same time, it's important to know that in the very fact that a child was conceived, and as you see here, according to one view, from the moment of conception, there already is the possibility of the Share in the world to come, which means the soul already came to this body to fulfill its purpose. So even if, God forbid, the life of the child doesn't even make it to birth, but in the fact that the soul came to this body already fulfills its purpose, at least in some degree, in that when the soul comes down here, it hastens the ultimate redemption, and thus earns a share in the world to come. Now we know elsewhere, this is, for example, found in the beginning of the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, in the second version, of which we don't have so much, but in that second version, he describes, mentions briefly the process of the soul coming into this body, the godly soul, that the godly soul is fully developed in the body at bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, but it begins already at conception, and then develops more at birth, even more at the Brit Milah, and as the Jew engages in more and more godly behavior, saying Amen, relating words of Torah, the godly soul is more and more developed. And perhaps the question amongst all these scholars here is to what point does the soul need to be developed in the body to which we can say it fulfilled its purpose? And as I mentioned, I shared a number of times, I don't get a vote. Nobody asked me for my vote, but certainly the very fact that the Gemara entertains the idea means there is truth to it. And at the moment of conception already, the fact that a Jewish child is conceived already means that some purpose has been fulfilled in the parents bringing the soul into the body, and therefore that soul already gets a share in the world to come, even at the moment of conception. It's a remarkable idea. Or perhaps we can state even more in that everybody agrees at the moment of conception it earns a share in the world to come. They're only discussing maybe various levels of the world to come, and that as the child develops and earns more mitzvahs, and a brit milah, or saying amen, or laying words of Torah, maybe it starts to earn higher levels of the share in the world to come. But we might even suggest that everybody agrees that the share in the world to come begins at conception, and it's just a question of what level, perhaps. Having mentioned the idea of amen, the Gemara continues down the top of page Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph 111a. The Gemara asks as follows: My amen. What is the meaning of the word amen? Now, the Gemara elsewhere discusses this more at length on Shabbos. Here the Gemara just tells us as follows: Rav Chanina says the word amen, which literally means I confirm. So when someone makes a blessing and you respond amen, what you're really saying is I confirm what this person has just said. But the Gemara gives us a different, deeper layer of meaning, and takes the word amen and divides it into three words: the aleph, mem, and nun of the word amen, and two, kel, melech, neman, God, the trusted king. So it's not just confirming what the person said, but actually adding a bit of praise. Also, the Gemara discusses the virtue of saying amen more elaborately at length, but here the Gemara says here as well. In the notes on the side here, they bring another version which says emes melech neman, not kel melech neman, not God, the trusted king, but the truth of the trusted king. Also using the word, the three letters aleph mem nun, but instead of the first aleph being kel, aleph lamed el, one of God's names, with it being ms, truth. Okay, we're going to stop over here, but tomorrow we have another fascinating discussion in the Gemara here about what's required for one to do to either gain or lose their share in the world to come. Fascinating discussion, God willing, coming up tomorrow.